December 16th, 1944, 4:30 a.m. The cold is sharp enough to numb fingers through gloves. The air is still. The forest is silent in a way that feels unnatural. American soldiers try to stay warm in shallow positions carved out of frozen earth. Most believe the German army is finished. Many expect to go home soon. Then the ground begins to shake. At first it feels like distant thunder. Then it grows, a steady vibration rolling through the soil and into the bones of every man on the line. Shadows move between the trees, dark shapes, hundreds, then thousands. A mass so large it seems impossible to count. More than 400,000 German soldiers advancing together in total silence. No warnings were sent. No radio intercepts were caught. No scout patrol reported unusual movement. Within minutes, the calm of the forest is gone. Entire American units are swallowed by the attack. Communications collapse. Outposts disappear. Some soldiers fight without understanding what hit them. Others never get the chance. What makes this moment so shocking is not the violence of the assault, but who launched it. The German army is outnumbered, outgunned, running out of fuel, running out of ammunition. Its cities are burning. Its factories are collapsing. By every strategic measure, the war is already lost. So how did this happen? How did an army on the edge of destruction strike with a force that stunned the most powerful industrial nation on Earth? American commanders searching for answers found something they never expected. Man for man, the German soldier was more effective than the American soldier. Not because he was more devoted to Hitler, not because he was more brutal, but because he was trained to be dangerous in a way the average American soldier was not. This explains why American casualties in Europe were so high, why battles that looked simple on paper became nightmares, why American veterans who later fought in Korea and Vietnam said the same thing. The hardest enemy they ever fought were the Germans. And it explains why, after the war, the United States studied German doctrine and quietly adopted parts of it. Before we continue, I want you to do something quick. Comment where you are watching from. Our last video had viewers from more than 50 countries. Let's see if you can push that number higher. And if you want history told without myths or illusions, hit subscribe. What you are about to hear is not a story about German victory. It is a story about why they were so hard to defeat, even in the final days of a dying war. To understand why German soldiers fought the way they did, you have to begin long before the battlefield, long before a rifle was issued, long before a uniform was worn. You have to begin in childhood. Most people assume German soldiers began training when they enlisted. The truth is almost 10 years earlier. In the mid-1930s, German boys entered the Hitler Youth at age 10. It was presented as a national program, a source of pride, a way to build strength and discipline. But beneath the slogans, it was a preparation system for war. A child learned how to march in formation, how to navigate forests and fields, how to endure cold, hunger, and exhaustion, how to obey immediately, how to lead when the moment demanded it. By 1937, these boys were attending rifle schools. By 1938, more than 1.5 million of them could hit targets with accuracy. By 1939, German high command officers were overseeing their field exercises. Thousands grew up believing that hardship was normal and discomfort was expected. They learned to treat the outdoors as a second home. Weather, mud, darkness, hunger. All of it was part of the training long before they faced the Red Army or the Western Allies. Now look at the average American soldier in 1944. 19 years old, 3 or 4 months of training, basic drills in clean facilities, weapon familiarization, classroom instruction, then deployment. For many Americans, the Army was the first time they had ever left home, the first time they had marched long distances, the first time they had fired a weapon. Their introduction to war was sudden and violent. Their first day of real combat for many was D-Day, a moment that would have been a shock even for a veteran. But the deeper difference was not time or mileage. It was identity. American soldiers were trained to follow a system. German soldiers were trained to operate without one. American doctrine taught a clear structure. You learn your role. You follow your sergeant. Your sergeant follows the officer. The officer follows the plan. German doctrine taught something else. What do you do when the plan collapses? What do you do when the officer is gone? What do you do when the battlefield turns into chaos? German training prepared soldiers to think and act in those moments, not freeze. They learned to solve problems themselves. They learned to take initiative without waiting for permission. And that single difference shaped everything that happened once bullets began to fly. This foundation, built from childhood to adulthood, created a soldier who reacted faster, adapted faster, and understood the battlefield instinctively. It produced confidence under pressure and a willingness to act when others hesitated. And on a battlefield where seconds mattered, that difference changed lives. Training shaped the soldier, doctrine shaped the fight, and the difference between American and German doctrine was never clearer than in the first chaotic seconds of contact. To understand it, imagine two versions of the same moment. An American infantry squad moves through a quiet French village. The houses are made of stone, the streets are narrow. The men stay alert but calm. Then a burst of machine gun fire rips through the air from a second-floor window. The squad drops behind a low wall. Dust falls from the impact of bullets. One man is hit. Another freezes. The sergeant reaches for the radio. His voice is controlled but tense. He calls the lieutenant. The lieutenant is 200 yards back and cannot see the target. He passes the request up the chain. The captain unfolds a map, studies coordinates, estimates fields of fire, then calls for artillery. The gunners adjust elevation, calculate distance, and prepare shells. 15 minutes pass. The squad is still pinned. The machine gun crew has complete control of the street. Now, picture the German version. A German squad moves through similar terrain. They take fire from a stone house. The impact is sudden and violent. The squad hits the ground, but their sergeant does not reach for a radio. He lifts his head just enough to study the building. Upper window, lower window, doorway. Then he spots a basement window, almost hidden behind weeds and debris. Unprotected, dark. He signals two soldiers. No shouting, no discussion. They move immediately, not because they are fearless, but because they have trained for moments exactly like this since childhood. The sergeant opens fire on the upper window to draw attention. The two soldiers sprint along the left side of the house. Their breathing is heavy. Their boots scrape against stone. One pulls a stick grenade, twists the fuse, and counts silently. He rolls the grenade into the basement window. A muffled blast echoes inside the building. The machine gun stops. 3 minutes. Problem identified. Problem solved. The difference is not luck. It is doctrine. American soldiers were taught to follow the plan. German soldiers were taught to adapt when the plan died. This approach had a name: mission-type tactics. A commander told his men what needed to be achieved, not how to achieve it. Soldiers were expected to make decisions on the ground. They had the authority to act without waiting for approval. The battlefield rewarded this system. After-action reports show the pattern clearly. Smaller German units holding positions far longer than expected. Flanking movements executed without orders. Counterattacks launched before American units could reorganize. Moments where speed and initiative turned a small squad into a dangerous opponent. American forces saw it again and again. When the unexpected happened, German soldiers moved first. And in war, the side that acts before the other reacts holds the advantage. This was not aggression without thought. It was discipline shaped through years of preparation. And it changed the outcome of countless small engagements. Even with better training and faster decision-making, one factor created the widest gap between German and American soldiers: Experience. Not mild experience. Not a few skirmishes. The kind of experience that burns itself into the mind and never leaves. By 1944, many of the German soldiers facing American forces in France were veterans of the Eastern Front. They had survived battles that broke entire armies. They had watched cities burn to the ground. They had fought in weather so cold that skin froze to metal and rifles cracked open. They had carried wounded men through snow so deep it swallowed them to the waist. They had seen more death in a month than many Western soldiers saw in a lifetime. Stalingrad left entire divisions buried beneath rubble. Kursk unleashed the largest tank battle in history. The Soviet winter froze machines, men, and hope itself. Soviet offensives came in waves that did not stop, even when the ground was covered with bodies. In that environment, the only rule was survival. Soldiers learned to fight when outnumbered, outflanked, and exhausted. They learned to move when orders never arrived. They learned to make decisions under fire because hesitation meant death. They learned to keep going when everything around them had already collapsed. This forged a kind of instinct American soldiers had no chance to develop in training camps. It produced reflexes sharpened by terror. It created confidence earned through endurance, not instruction. Now compare this to the average American soldier landing on Omaha Beach or Utah Beach. Many had never fired a shot in anger. They were 19 years old, stepping into their first real battle. Their hands shook. Their breathing was uneven. The noise of artillery stunned them. The first dead body they saw might have been a friend who had been alive minutes earlier. For the German soldier, the first dead body he had seen was years earlier. The shock was gone. The fear remained, but it was controlled. Experience had hardened the edges. American intelligence teams reading early battle reports noticed the same pattern. German units fought with discipline even under pressure. They retreated in organized lines instead of collapsing. They counterattacked aggressively when openings appeared. They used terrain with precision, turning hills, forests, and villages into traps. What surprised Americans even more came near the end of the war. German effectiveness did not drop as their situation worsened. It increased. In Berlin in April 1945, a surrounded force of about 100,000 defenders, many old men and teenage boys, inflicted more than 80,000 casualties on Soviet troops and destroyed nearly 2,000 tanks in just 2 weeks. An army on the verge of collapse should fall apart. Instead, it fought with a level of skill that made every block of Berlin a battlefield. This was the kind of enemy American forces faced across Europe. The Germany they fought was not at its height. It was crumbling, but even in collapse, its soldiers remained some of the most dangerous fighters on the continent. Experience had carved them into survivors, and survivors are difficult to defeat. Weapons shaped the way American soldiers experienced the war, and few weapons left a deeper mark than the German MG-42. For American troops hearing it for the first time, the MG-42 didn't sound like a machine gun. It sounded like something tearing the air apart. 1,200 rounds per minute. A steady ripping noise that echoed through forests and stone buildings. Veterans later said the sound alone could freeze you for a moment. It wasn't just fast. It was overwhelming. It changed how American soldiers moved, how they advanced, and how they fought. But what made the MG-42 so effective wasn't only its rate of fire. It was the way German squads were built around it. The machine gun was the heart of the unit. Every soldier in that squad existed to support it. When the MG-42 opened up, the entire squad followed its rhythm. It created a kind of firepower. American units were not designed to match at the squad level. American squads were structured around the rifleman. The bar was support, not the centerpiece. So when American soldiers ran into a German squad anchored by an MG-42, they were often shocked by the amount of fire coming from so few men. It felt like fighting a much larger force. Then you reach one of the biggest myths American audiences have heard for decades. The belief that 5 Sherman tanks were needed to destroy one Tiger. Movies repeat it, documentaries suggest it, even some veterans believed it, but it's wrong. The idea came from a single memoir written after the war. The US Army's own studies show a different picture. In 30 tank engagements analyzed in 1946, Shermans often got the better of Panthers. British reports say that Allied tank units routinely inflicted more losses than they took. And the truth is simple. Tigers were rare. Most American tank crews fought Panzer Vs. Shermans handled those evenly. The real American advantage wasn't the gun or the armor. It was reliability and numbers. American tanks stayed running. American mechanics kept them moving. American factories kept producing them. For every Tiger Germany built, the United States built 10 Shermans. That mattered far more than any one-on-one comparison. Still, American tank crews faced danger every time they moved into combat. German crews were experienced. They knew how to use terrain. They fired from cover. They hit first when they could. Many had survived years of tank battles on the Eastern Front. They knew tricks American crews had never seen. And yet, the United States pushed forward. Not because of luck, not because of superior machines, but because American logistical power never stopped. More tanks arrived, more fuel arrived, more parts arrived. American soldiers learned, adapted, and kept coming. This is what surprised so many Americans after the war. German units were deadly because of skill. American units won because of endurance. One side fought with precision. The other fought with a system that never let them fall behind. The weapons tell that story clearly. And when American troops faced German firepower for the first time, they realized something that stayed with them for the rest of their lives. The German soldier didn't need better technology to be dangerous. He only needed what he had, and the training to use it well. For American soldiers, one truth became clear as the war went on. The United States had the best logistical system any army had ever seen. If an American unit needed artillery, it arrived. If they needed air support, it showed up overhead. If tanks were lost, new ones appeared within days. The US military could replace almost anything, except time. And this is where the paradox begins. American units were powerful, but they were also tied to a system that required vehicles, fuel, engineers, supply lines, and coordination. Moving forward meant planning, securing routes, establishing depots, protecting the chain that kept the army strong. This approach saved lives in the long run, but it slowed the battlefield down in the short term. German units had the opposite reality. They had almost no fuel, no surplus ammunition, no steady supply lines. Their equipment broke down and stayed broken. But these problems forced something the Americans did not expect: speed. German units traveled light because they had no other choice. They moved fast because slowing down meant running out of fuel or being overrun. They launched counterattacks quickly because waiting for perfect conditions was not an option. They struck hard in the morning, disappeared into forests, and reappeared miles away in the evening. American soldiers often described this as fighting an opponent who refused to stay defeated. You could push a German unit back, only to face it again hours later from a new direction. Even in retreat, they looked for openings to strike. Even low on supplies, they moved with urgency and a sense of desperation that made them unpredictable. This difference showed sharply during the Battle of the Bulge. Germany committed close to 500,000 men. They pushed deep into Allied lines with shock, speed, and winter weather on their side. They caused chaos among American units that believed the war was almost over. Germany lost more than 100,000 soldiers in that offensive, irreplaceable losses. But before those losses came, they delivered a blow that reminded American troops of something important. Skill and speed could still cost lives, even late in the war. For American soldiers on the ground, this was the lesson. Logistical power wins wars. Speed wins moments. And in those moments, German units were still dangerous. The United States could replace tanks, trucks, guns, and ammunition. Germany could not. But Germany could respond faster to chaos. They had learned to live inside it. They moved before Americans were fully set up. They attacked before American firepower was ready. They counterattacked while American units were still reorganizing. American strength came from a system that never stopped. German strength came from soldiers who refused to be passive. And whenever those two forces met in the same battle, the result was the same combination the American soldier remembers to this day. Germany hit hard. America kept going. There was another challenge American soldiers faced, one that had nothing to do with German tactics or German weapons. It came from the environment itself and from the way war affects a soldier's mind long before the enemy fires a shot. January 1945 was the coldest January Western Europe had seen in recorded history. Temperatures dropped so low that rifles froze, machine guns jammed, vehicles refused to start. American soldiers fought not just the enemy, but the cold that cut through uniforms and soaked into bones. Trench foot became one of the quiet killers of the war. More than 23,000 American soldiers suffered from it in 2 months. Feet stayed wet, then numb, then turned black. Some men were carried off the line without ever firing their weapon. Others fought while knowing their toes might not make it to the end of the week. German soldiers, especially those who had survived the Eastern Front, knew how to handle the cold. They had learned through years of fighting in conditions far worse than anything in France or Belgium. They knew how to keep their feet dry, how to sleep in the cold without freezing, how to build shelter fast. Their experience became an advantage the moment the temperature dropped. But there was another kind of shock many American soldiers didn't expect. The enemy looked familiar. A captured German soldier often had the same last names American troops grew up with: Müller, Schmidt, Weber. Many American soldiers had German ancestry themselves. Some spoke German at home. For them, seeing the enemy up close felt unsettling. It felt personal. They were fighting people who looked like neighbors, co-workers, even family members. That changed on December 17, 1944. Near Malmedy, SS troops captured 84 American prisoners. They lined them up in a field. Then they shot them. The news spread fast. Soldiers heard it in the cold, in the dark, and in the middle of already difficult fighting. And for many Americans, sympathy vanished. The divide became clear. There was the Wehrmacht, professional soldiers, and there was the SS, ideological fighters who killed prisoners. After Malmedy, American troops fought with a different resolve. The war felt less distant, less abstract, more personal. And through all of this, one truth stood out. German soldiers were not superhuman. They were not unbeatable, but they were trained, experienced, and relentless. They reacted quickly under fire. They endured cold better. They had seen years of combat before many Americans had even finished high school, yet Germany still lost. The reason mattered to American soldiers then, and it matters now. German tactical skill could hold ground for a day. American logistical power could hold ground for a war. Germany produced fighters who excelled in the moment. The United States produced a system that sustained its army across continents. For the American soldier, this was the lesson written in ice, mud, and blood. Germany could hit hard, but the United States could keep coming. So now, you have the full picture. German soldiers were trained early, fought with initiative, and carried experience that shaped every engagement. American soldiers faced an opponent who could hit hard in the moment, even when the war was already lost. But the United States brought something different: logistics, industry, Numbers. A system that kept moving no matter how many setbacks came. That is why the Allies won. Not because the German soldier was weak, but because the American system was stronger. Now here is the question for you. Were German soldiers actually better, man for man, or do we simply tend to romanticize the side that lost? Leave your answer in the comments, and if this changed how you understand World War II, hit like and subscribe for more history told the way it really happened. Thanks for watching.